When my husband said, "You never really did much for this family," I did not answer him. I was standing in the kitchen at that moment. The rice was still on the stove. The window was open, and the evening air felt heavy. I remember holding the spoon in my hand, not because I wanted to stir the rice, but because my hand did not know what else to do. I smiled. Not a happy smile, just a quiet one. Inside me, something small broke. Not loudly. Not all at once. It was the kind of breaking that happens when something has been cracking for years. I had been married to this man for 32 years. I had shared a home with him, shared children, shared sickness, shared silence. And yet, in that moment, I realized something painful. He had forgotten everything I gave. Or maybe he never truly saw it at all. I did not cry. I did not argue. I simply turned off the stove and walked away. That was the day I understood what it means to disappear while still being alive. I met my husband when I was very young. I was not brave or bold back then. I was soft-spoken. I believed love meant patience. He was kind in the beginning, not romantic, but steady. We married without much celebration. No big wedding. No loud music. Just promises spoken softly. I moved into his home. A small house with thin walls. And neighbors who listened too closely. In those early years, I learned how to become quiet. I learned how to wake before everyone else. How to cook before the sun rose. How to make food stretch when money did not. When our first child was born, I stopped sleeping deeply. I stopped thinking about myself. I told myself this was normal. This was love. My husband worked long hours. He came home tired. I made sure the house was clean, so he could rest. When he complained about the food, I changed the recipe. When he complained about noise, I quieted the children. I never thought of it as sacrifice. I thought of it as duty. Years passed this way. Slowly. Quietly. I was always there, but never seen. The forgetting did not happen overnight. It came in small moments. He forgot my birthday once. Then again. He forgot how I stayed awake through nights of his illness. How I held his hand when he was afraid. When our children grew older, they learned his voice more than mine. He was the one who spoke. I was the one who listened. Sometimes I tried to talk. "I feel tired," I once said. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the television. Another time I said, "I gave up my job when the children were small." He replied, "That was your choice." I remember those words clearly. They stayed with me. My choice. I began to wonder if love was supposed to feel this lonely. The house felt louder, yet I felt smaller. At family gatherings, he talked about his struggles, his hard work, his sacrifices. I stood beside him, smiling politely. No one asked about mine. The day he said I never did much was not special. There was no argument, no raised voice, just that sentence, spoken like a fact. I went to the bedroom afterward. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. These hands had cooked thousands of meals, held sick children, washed clothes, paid bills silently. And yet, they were invisible. That night, I did something I had not done in years. I stayed silent. Not the quiet of obedience, but the quiet of understanding. I realized I had been shrinking to keep peace. I had erased myself so others could feel comfortable. And in doing so, I taught my husband that my sacrifices did not matter, that I did not leave him. Not physically, but something inside me stepped back. I stopped explaining myself, stopped trying to prove my worth. I began taking small moments for myself, sitting by the window, drinking tea slowly. At first, he did not notice. Then one evening he asked, "Why are you so quiet these days?" I looked at him and said, "I have always been quiet." He laughed, but I did not. Weeks later, he fell sick again, and as I cared for him, I did not rush. I was still kind, but no longer invisible. One night he whispered, "I don't know how I would manage without you." I said nothing, because love should not be remembered. Only when it is missing. Now I sit alone most evenings. The house is calm. The children have grown. My husband speaks more gently these days. He notices things he once ignored. Sometimes he says, "You have always been strong." I smile again. That same quiet smile. Not because everything is healed, but because I know who I am now. Love should not require forgetting yourself. Sacrifice should not mean disappearing. And if someone forgets what you gave, it does not mean it had no value. It means they were not looking closely enough. I tell this story for anyone who feels unseen. You matter, even when your voice is soft. Especially then, after that day in the kitchen, nothing changed on the outside. The house was still the same. The walls did not move. The clocks kept ticking. But inside me, something had shifted. I started noticing things I had ignored for years, like how my husband never asked how my day was, not because he was cruel, but because he assumed I was fine. I noticed how meals appeared on the table, as if by magic. Clean clothes folded themselves. Bills were paid quietly. I had made life easy for everyone. So easy that my effort disappeared. One afternoon, I found an old notebook in a drawer. It was mine, from years ago. Inside were small notes, reminders, things I had written to myself. Buy medicine. Call school. Remember parent meeting. Not one line about rest. Not one line about joy. I sat on the floor, holding that notebook, and felt a deep tiredness, not of the body, but of the heart. That evening, my husband talked about his work again. They don't appreciate me, he said. I give everything, and they forget. I listened quietly. I wanted to say, I understand, but I didn't, because I finally realized how heavy it feels to give everything and still be unseen. There were moments that seemed small, but they stayed with me. Once during a family dinner, someone praised my husband. He has done so much for his family, they said. Everyone nodded. I smiled as always, but inside, I felt myself fade just a little more. Another time, our daughter asked him, "Who taught me how to read?" He paused. "I think your teacher," he said. I was sitting right there. I remembered those nights, the soft light, the books, the patience. But I said nothing. Silence had become my language. Not because I had nothing to say, but because no one seemed ready to hear. The real breaking point did not come with shouting. It came with exhaustion. One morning, I woke up and felt empty. Not sad. Not angry. Just empty. I made breakfast slowly. The same food. The same routine. My husband looked at the plate and said, "This tastes different." I nodded. It was not the food. It was me. I had stopped pouring myself into everything. That day, I did not clean the house perfectly. I did not rush. I sat by the window instead. The light came in softly. Dust floated in the air. I thought about my life, about how I had loved quietly, worked silently, endured patiently, and I asked myself a question I had never asked before. Who am I? When no one needs anything from me. The answer scared me, because I did. Not no point one evening. My husband noticed. "You've changed," he said. His voice was not angry, just confused. I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," I said softly. "I think I have." He waited. I continued slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I have been here all these years," I said. "But I don't think you ever really saw me." He laughed lightly, not unkindly. "You're always here," he said. "Of course I see you." That was the moment I realized being present is not the same as being valued. I did not argue. I simply said, "I hope one day you understand what that feels like." After that, I stopped expecting understanding. And strangely, that gave me peace. I still cooked, still cared, but I no longer erased myself. I began reading again, writing small thoughts in a new notebook. Not reminders for others, but thoughts for myself. I went for short walks alone. Slow walks. The world felt different. When I was not rushing back, my husband started noticing the silence. "Are you unhappy?" he asked one night. I thought carefully. "No," I said. "I am just no longer invisible." He did not reply. Sometimes silence is the beginning of learning. Weeks passed. One day, he struggled to find something. He searched the house, frustrated. "Where is it?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied gently. He looked at me surprised. "You always know," he said. I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I always did." That night, he looked thoughtful. Not guilty. Not dramatic. Just thoughtful. And that was enough. That I do not tell this story to blame my husband. He is not a bad man. He simply grew used to my sacrifices. And I allowed that. Love does not fail loudly. It fades quietly. And sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is stop disappearing. If you are listening to this and feel unseen, I want you to know something. Your sacrifices mattered, even if no one named them. And it is never too late. As time went on, small things began to surface. Not arguments. Not apologies. Memories. One afternoon, my husband sat at the dining table, looking at an old photo album. I had not opened it in years. He turned a page slowly. "This was when the children were small," he said. I nodded. He stared at one picture for a long time. In it, he was smiling proudly, holding our son. I was in the background, half out of the frame, watching. "I don't remember this day," he said. I did. I remembered the heat, the crying, the fear of doing everything wrong. I remembered how tired I was. But I only said, "It was a long day." He looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in years. His eyes stayed on my face. "You look different here," he said. I smiled softly. "Yes," I replied. I was younger. What I did not say was this. I was also fuller then. I had not given everything away yet. That night, he asked a question that surprised me. "Were you lonely when the children were growing up?" The question hung in the air. I did not rush to answer. Loneliness is a heavy word. It carries years inside it. "Yes," I said finally. "Sometimes." He looked down at his hands. "I thought," he began, then stopped. "I thought you were strong," he finished. I nodded. I said. "I am." Strength does not mean you do not feel pain. It only means you carry it quietly. He did not defend himself. He did not explain. That silence felt different. It felt like listening. After that conversation, nothing magical happened. There were no tears. No promises. Just small changes. He began asking simple questions. "Are you tired? Do you want help? Can I do this today?" At first, it felt strange, like wearing clothes that did not belong to me. I was used to handling everything, used to being the background. But slowly, I let him try. Sometimes he forgot again. Old habits return easily. But now, I no longer felt erased. Because I had stopped erasing myself. One morning, I said something new. "I'm going out for a while." He looked up. "Where?" "I don't know yet," I said. And that was the truth. I walked slowly. No destination. Just movement. I realized something important that day. I had spent years explaining my value through service. But my worth did not need proof. It simply existed. I sat on a bench and watched people pass. Everyone was carrying something. Everyone had a story. And for the first time, I felt like my own story mattered to me. That I am still married, still a wife, still a mother. But I am also myself now. My husband has learned things. So have I. He learned that love cannot survive on habit alone. And I learned that sacrifice without voice becomes silence. If you are listening and feel forgotten, please hear this gently. Loving others should not mean losing yourself. Your kindness is not invisible. Your care is not small. And even if someone forgets what you gave, you do not have to forget who you are. Sometimes, the story does not end with leaving. Sometimes, it ends with being seen. And sometimes, that begins when you finally see yourself. These days, I wake up earlier than everyone else. Not because I have to, but because I like the quiet. The house feels different in the morning. Soft. Almost forgiving. I sit at the table with a cup of tea and let my thoughts wander. I think about the young woman I once was, the one who believed love meant giving, until there was nothing left. She did not know any better. She only knew how to care. I do not blame her. She did the best she could, with the understanding she had. Sometimes I walk through the rooms, and memories rise gently. The kitchen where I cooked, even when I was sick. The bedroom where I cried quietly, so no one would worry. The hallway where I waited for footsteps that meant everyone was home safe. None of that was wasted. Even if it was forgotten, there is something I wish someone had told me years ago. Love does not need to be proven by exhaustion. Care does not need to be silent to be real. And sacrifice does not mean you must disappear. I thought being strong meant enduring everything. I thought patience meant never speaking. But real strength, I have learned, also knows when to pause. It knows when to say, I matter too. Not loudly, not angrily, just truthfully. And my husband and I talk differently now. Not more, just differently. Sometimes he asks me about my thoughts, not my tasks, not my plans, my thoughts. At first, I did not know how to answer. I had spent so long thinking for others. But slowly, words came back to me. Simple words. Honest ones. He listens now. Not perfectly, but sincerely. And I allow myself to be heard. That is new for both of us. If you are listening to this late at night, or while doing chores, or while feeling unseen, I want to speak to you gently. You are not invisible because you give quietly. You are not less important because you ask for little. And you are not selfish for wanting to be noticed. Your sacrifices were acts of love. But love should not erase you. It should hold you. Life teaches slowly. Sometimes it teaches us after many years. Sometimes it teaches us when we finally stop running. If someone in your life has forgotten what you gave, it does not mean it had no meaning. It means it is time to remember yourself. You do not need to leave to be whole. And you do not need permission to take up space. Sometimes, the most powerful change is quiet. And sometimes, the softest voice is the one that finally tells the truth. This is not a story about blame. It is a story about awakening, about a woman who loved deeply, gave fully, and learned slowly to stand gently in her own life. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Love others, care deeply, but do not forget to care for yourself too, because you were never meant to disappear. In the name of love, life did not suddenly become different. It became clearer. Days continued, as they always had. Breakfast in the morning, sunlight on the floor, evenings that arrived without asking. But now, I notice myself inside those days. When I felt tired, I rested. When I felt overwhelmed, I paused. Not because someone allowed me to, but because I finally allowed myself. My husband watched these changes quietly. One afternoon he said, "You don't rush anymore." I smiled. "I don't need to," I replied. He nodded slowly, as if that sentence stayed with him. There came a day when words returned to him. Not excuses, not defenses, memories. "I didn't realize how much you carried," he said one evening. We were sitting at the table. No television. Just us. "I thought providing was enough," he continued. I didn't see the rest. I listened calmly. I did not interrupt. I did not correct him. Understanding does not need arguing. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for forgetting. Those words were not dramatic, but they were heavy with meaning. I nodded. Thank you, I said. That's all I needed. Healing did not feel like happiness. It felt like relief. The kind that lets your shoulders drop. After years of tension, we did not rewrite the past. We accepted it. Some days were still quiet. Some habits were still slow to change. But respect had entered the room. And once respect arrives, love breathes differently. That I watch my children now. Adults with their own lives, their own struggles. I notice how easily people forget. The quiet ones. So I speak more. Not to complain, but to exist. When my daughter thanks me, I let her. When my son asks for advice, I take my time answering. I do not rush anymore. I want them to learn something. I learned late that love should not cost your voice. If this story reaches you during a quiet moment, hold it gently. Let it remind you to look closely at the people who give without asking. Let it remind you to speak kindly to yourself. And if you're the one who forgot, it is not too late to remember. Acknowledgement can heal what silence wounded. I am not a perfect woman, and my husband is not a perfect man, but we are learning. Even now, life is not about keeping score. It is about seeing clearly. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is finally saying, I see you. This is where my story rests, not with pain, but with understanding. And that, for me, is enough. Point 5.